Nope. All right. So yeah, let's go to After Effects and check out some stuff. So does everyone here use After Effects? Before I get technical and start showing conk things that won't even make sense. Yes? No? Anyone? Maybe? Never? Is my mic on? Are you guys still there? I guess so. Mics are muted. Okay. So After Effects has text animators, which are a module inside that allow you to do stuff like this. And they are mostly used for in and out animations. But while I was actually working on a project and constructing something exactly like this, I discovered that you can actually make elements out of text. So like without these accents, if you just look at the line alone, well, it's something pretty interesting happening and something we could probably manipulate when it comes to creating other elements. So for example, here we have these dots, and if you go in and say animate scale, I hope you guys know this stuff because I want to run through it. These text animators are a bit complicated. Will take up time if I start going through them. So you can animate from one side to the other, make them come in. So if we close the gap between them until it looked like a line, then we can use scale Y to just make them taller a bit. If you don't like these rounded corners, actually I'd say change the font, not really change the spacing. So let's get something with square dots. That would be impact. There we go. Nice. So 0. So you see we get a bunch of dots. And we can kill the spacing between them. So it looks like a line. So now when we animate this, you'll see we get a growing bar. Okay, that's alright, I guess. But we can ease low here so that they come in a bit softer. And we can also mess around with the randomized order. So if you switch this on, you can actually get this. So okay, those are two effects we can use in two different ways. Let's go down to say the graphs. I don't in the one of the Quantum of Solace ones I was showing, we had those lines that had spacing in between them, and it looked like a bar graph. So we can build something like that real quick right now. So we'll make the text, put the anchor point at the bottom, though it won't matter so much. We can space them out so that we get those little black spaces in between. I think for what was being done in that one, the spaces and the lines were the same width. So I'll just try and get them about the same. And if I need more, I can just select all, copy, and then paste, and they can go all across the screen. We still need more. So then when you go into the text animators, you'll find they have this anchor point grouping. It's not showing right now because my masks are off. No, they're on. Okay. You can see these tiny X's, and they indicate the anchor point of where everything we're going to do is going to happen. So the good thing of using dots is that, or actually using text, is that the anchor point is always at the bottom. The good thing for us right now, but in general that actually becomes an issue. So we can go animate and choose scale. We get animator 2 here, which has the scale control, and then we can go down to let's see here, we can unlink this, scale the Y up. Ooh, squeaky. Scale the Y up, and then to get that nice wavy shape, in fact this is where epipping comes in handy. We can say we want something like this. We can come down to range selector. Oops, Go down to animator 2, go to add, selector, and choose wiggly. And that's going to do this. So they're going to all get different scale values. And when you play, they wiggle. And just the value consistently changes over time. So now there's an issue I have here in that they're not really related. They're all sort of doing their own thing. And they're also they're also not following this. They're also some that are going downwards. So if you go to wiggly selector, down here to minimum amount, we'll set to 0 instead of minus 100, so that now they stop going to negative. And then down here we have another one called correlation, which is the correlation of the particles relative to one another. So if I set it to 0, they'll all kind of do their own thing. If I set it to 100, they all do the same thing. So we can try find a middle ground somewhere. It's kind of like scale, I guess. There we go. And now when we play, they sort of look like a nice wave. Sort of. So wiggles per second can go down to 1. So that now we get this. I guess I don't have enough frames, so it's looping pretty quick. But I guess you get the idea. Then what we can do now on this animator 1, which is what we had doing the scale. If I come down here to offset, I can do this. So it's going to scale everyone down to 0. So I can keyframe it here and then move this forward, and you'll see they'll all come up. Alright, that's mainly because we have randomize order on. So if you switch that off, it starts from left to right. And you basically have yourself a nice bar graph. So what else could you possibly do with this? You can also change the direction it animates in from. You can leave that wave at minus 100 so that it goes both directions. Actually, that should look pretty interesting. So let's go back to animator 2 and we'll go to minimum amount and do minus 100, and I get something pretty cool. Not really, actually, no. I much prefer this way. So what about the text? What about the numbers at the bottom? Well, honestly, I'd just say just manually just write 1, 2, 3, 4 until you get a bunch of numbers at the bottom of the grid. But you can get something nice that way. But the main point here is that you can actually use text layers to make these nice shapes. So here's another thing you can do. Let's switch this off. Grab the circle tool. We can select the layer as well, and then add the grid. Then I'll hold Alt. Oops, which one is it? This is PC. PC is Shift and Control, right? Yes. So I'll just draw a circle real quick, maybe this big. Then I'll switch this back on. See, it's masking it out, but that's not what I want. What I want is we go to path options. Oops, more options. Path options. Let's go to path and choose mask 1. And that's going to put everything around the path. So you'll see it sort of draws on the way we are done with the other one, but now it's going round. That's pretty cool. But what I'll do down here with the path is reverse the path so that now they go outwards. So you'll see now they're sort of overlapping, because what's happening is the line is longer than the space available. So to fix that, we could reduce the number of dots. Okay, I'm just gonna add more time now. 24 frames, my goodness, let's do 4 seconds. Cool. You can space these keyframes more so it looks a bit cleaner. And there you go. So we can go to correlation again and drop it lower so it looks more like a star. You know, from here on out, it's really entirely up to you and what you decide to do. So here's another one I made for the demo. Let's go to grid boxes. We'll start from here. So this one was taking ideas from what we've learned so far, as well as some new ideas as well. So here I was trying out what we had before. We had this effect happening where we have a bunch of shapes and then they're randomly being affected. So now I got a bunch of full stops and just made a couple of lines of them. There's actually 16 by 9 dots. And there's a random effector inside that's now doing this. So you'll see the correlation is pretty low. And now to get this grid animation was basically the same thing. Get a bunch of animators. Get animator 1, which is doing tracking, which is spacing them out from each other, and also line spacing. So it's just going to spread them out like this. And now I have the selector, the range selector is moving from the back. And it's working line by line instead of character by character. So that makes them move, well, actually it's character by character, but the spacing between them is a lot closer, so you can't really tell. And then when you have the line spacing and tracking happening at the same time, I don't know, it just kind of works out that they move the way they do. Then on top of that, there is a animator 2, which is now the flashing that you see of the opacity. And then there's animator 3, which is a bit unique from what I usually do. In this time, instead of animating the range selector, I'm animating just the scale alone. And what this is doing is scaling them up so that when they move, you can see them move better. And then they scale down back to the normal size. Because what I found was happening is, as I added this icon, I added this white box, these lines moving. As I added all this stuff moving, it becomes a lot harder to see the dots. So I added this feature where they scale up so that as the animation is happening, they scale on up. And then the rest of it happens as usual. So shape layer. Shape layer is also really useful when it comes to animating HUDs. Just remember that you just need to have your design down early, so that when you get to this stage, you already know how you're animating it, and you also know what type of layers you're going to use. So this one, we have a bunch of shape layers which are doing this transition here. For the box, there is an echo effect which is making it look as if there's multiple copies. Oops, that's the wrong version. It's this shape layer. Yeah, I actually don't label layers all the time. So here we have an echo which is giving it that look as if there are many copies, because usually it would just expand like this, but when you add an echo, it adds this nice sort of retro-like look to it. There's also a light sweep which is happening after everything is done. There's just a light sweep that passes by, just sort of like indicating all the stuff is done. So let's finish up with this part. So what I did was add this line that appears as if someone has clicked, and then as it transitions, the line moves up, just to give it some more detail, by the way. This is definitely not something I came up with while designing. I originally only started with the dots as the first idea, the dots and that an email is going to open. but everything else after that basically just came up as we're going along. So the line appears, goes to the top, the dots do their thing. So everything is kind of happening. It's happening one after the other, but they're also overlapping one another. So you'll see as the click happens, the line starts moving up first, and then the rectangle moves. When the rectangle at the top starts to settle, that's when the dots start to move, and that's when it starts to scale vertically. And then the rectangle settles, and then the dots settle, and then that's when the light sweep happens. So I usually tend to have all these happening at the same time initially, and then now you go in and just offset a few keyframes here and there, one after the other, until you get something that looks pretty cool. So what about this effect of making it look like a Mac OS sort of appearance, especially this, how it tilts just before it happens? That's mainly an effect called warp. So you can set warp to shell lower. There's arc, there's bulge, there's fisheye, there's even flag, which looks pretty weird. Fish tries to make it look like a fish, which is pretty funny. But if you use these properly, you can actually get some pretty cool looks. In fact, you'll find the way it moves is actually a transform effect. It's not even the layer itself moving, because I wanted to have this warp as well. So the warp gives it that look, the transform makes it move. And then when you animate it, you just try and make it look like they're related, like they both end at the same time. Actually, they don't end at the same time, but they sort of affect one another. So as it's moving fast, it's warped, and then it slowly comes back, but it's fully straight before it stops moving. It's a few frames, but it makes all the difference. So now the same principle here is applying. The dots come on. As soon as the dots are done, the mail icon starts moving up, and at the same time the panel is coming back down. This guy lands at the top just as that bar is about to finish. Priority inbox appears, and then just as priority inbox is finished, you see this from workshop, this one appears, and the line also appears at the same time. So I'll probably delay the line so that it's not appearing at the same time. And then the text comes in underneath, and then we have these icons here and these icons down here. Pop. And so you get something looking nice and smooth. So the smoothness actually comes from that, from easing keyframes, and also just making sure that the next thing is starting just before the previous one ends. And that makes it look pretty cool. I think these came in a bit too soon. If you watch it properly, you'll see these guys come in and then they've already appeared. So your attention is here. You don't actually see these animating in. So what I would have done if I was updating this later is to grab those two guys and just delay them, so that right when that one attachment starts coming in, just as it's about to finish, is when we just start seeing these ones. Just like that is actually how I offset them. I wait for one to just about to end, and then bam, there we have the second set. Something else I wanted to add about these icons is if you know what dingbats are, they are fonts that are icons. They're really dope because now you can use the text animators on these, and you just have them all on one layer. They're not even individual. They're all in one layer, and you just animate it the same way we did with the text animators. And easy stuff, easy, nice and quick. Offsetting things is one layer. You just slide one layer down and you're done. So that's the email HUD. Using the same concepts that we've been picking up as we covered from the previous one, which is the dots, having the dots, the grid background, making sure everything makes sense. In this case, we have buttons that make sense, reply, mark as read, send to phone, close, I guess. One attachment is there, there's time, there's who sent it, and as everything is happening, we have the unread count there. As everything starts opening up, we have one thing happening after the other, so that you have time to process exactly what you're looking at. So dope. This gives you some time to read, and then it moves out of the way. We have the same effect happening here. We have a warp, which is giving it that angled look, and then the warp goes off. position happens, and the icons also come in generally at the same time. If we go to this window 2, you'll see there's these dots here for the loading process. Let's see these dots. So these are using the same process, just an animator going through and scaling them down, so it looks like it's loading. But I ended up putting this clip on top, so you don't even see the middle one. That was a choice I made way later on. Then for this down here, for the progress bar, there's something I just wanted to point out was this. There the graph goes, it doesn't go straight from 0 to 100. You have these little bumps in between. There's the same way a progress bar would go. Like if you copy a file or if you even download something, a lot of the time the bar pauses at some points, then jumps and then pauses again. So that's what you're trying to simulate here by putting these steps. So this is how it looks animated. So picking up all these things from reality and adding our own little spins to them is what helps all this stuff look super cool. Here's another one. This one this time is a targeting reticle. I showed this in the presentation. Oops. So let me show you some this one. So this one's a lot heavier, mainly because all these text layers has a heavy effect on it. Oh, I know what I can do. I can go to here. So this is the email one. So same thing happening as I mentioned before, stuff happening one after the other, and just taking examples from what we've seen in the other videos. Here's another one. This is the one I'm showing you now. So this one's a bit too fast actually. If I was doing it properly, I would have slowed it down a lot more. And you'll see why just now, because there's a certain approach I was going for that isn't quite coming out. So you have these guys moving. We have the outside moves first, but you'll see also the inside seems to happen at the same time. So what I'm trying to do here is make it look like the sticks outside are pushing in on the circles. So like, boop, it's forced them to be smaller. So once that's happened, the rotation, these guys start rotating. So actually this should happen after, not at the same time. Because what I have is this grows and then those grow while it's spinning at the same time. So that's probably where things are getting lost. And then the lines turn as the circle grows bigger. Then the dots turn. Then the lines go inside. So this is the part where the clarity was lost. What I was trying to do is make it look like the circle grows big so that these blue ones can move in and become red. But now it just happens so fast that the outside circles, especially moving, become so distracting that you don't have time to process that this is what we're waiting for. They also happen pretty fast, so you can't see it happening. So what I changed was I made the blue ones, this blue one stay out a bit longer, and then they come down when this whole thing scales down. And then finally we have this last click as it locks. So it was initially just this click alone. If you check the one on Instagram, it's actually this click alone, but later on I added it clicks locked and then the dots come in, and it's sort of like the last lock on the object. So when you finally play it, you get the same idea. You get the idea of what I was trying to do. So how exactly does something end up looking like this from a bunch of underscores and dashes? And the biggest idea here is that you want to visualize what you want and then try and achieve it before you try and achieve what you can based on what you know. So try your best, just push yourself to make different things. And just to point out, like these lines outside here were duplicated and scaled down, and then another version was duplicated and rotated 45 degrees, so that we have this plus here. And for the longest time, actually, while I was working on it, these two were doing the exact same thing. So you'd see like they both grow the same way. It's just that the timing is slightly different. They both rotate. This time the line and the dot move, but here it's the line that moves first, then the dot moves. So I just made a copy and then tried to break it up as much as possible, so that all the pieces appear to be doing different things. You'll see even the lock animation is still there, lock, but now they are offset. So yeah, that's one thing I'd say pick out of this segment is offset things as much as possible, and then try and make your designs and then improve them as you go along. So here's another example of something work in progress at the moment, which is an example of that indicator, that altitude indicator. So this one doesn't have as many animations, actually doesn't have any, but what I did was first tackle the design. So I got a bunch of letter T's, made one set which are thin and tall, and put them sideways. Then I got another set and put them like this and spaced them out a bit more. So when you put those two side by side, it kind of looks like a scale. And then I just add in some extra things like the striped lines and the two lines and the indicator, and you have yourself something. And this is something you can build on top of. If you take like After Effects has this effect called offset. So if I put the offset below this indicator, I can move the offset in Y, and it's going to move the whole scale. It also applies in X, but I don't really want it in X, I want it in Y. So you can use Y to move the scale like this. And if you also maybe even add some more effects on top, like a new adjustment layer, and we can add a lens, CC lens, and that's gonna give it this, but we can scale up the size so that wait, this is not what I was thinking about. It's pretty close, because you can also do the offset down here, and it's all going to do this weird wrapping around, but that's not what I want. What I really want is optics compensation. And if I crank this up, you'll see what I was trying to do initially, which is to get it to wrap and look like it's on a circle, like this is moving away and this is moving away. So if we offset down here, it looks like we have a sphere, but we actually don't. We just have things being wrapped around. Actually, CC Sphere would probably have done that as well. And then maybe reverse, let's see, that's also pretty interesting. We can also change where the center is, so we can do this. And this is more like if the gauge was on the right side of the screen. Then if it was on the left, we can do something like this. Okay, that kind of offsets it too much, but you can fix that later. Same still applies. If we reverse, now it goes really weird. Like that. Maybe this way. Yeah, that makes more sense. So now it's curved, looks a lot better. So a lot of the time you'll find you'll be just sitting here and experimenting, messing around, trying to find new ways to do things. It really helps to know all these effects and all the different ways you can apply them. Here's another one. You can add mirror, which will now make a copy, and you can also play around with this and see all these interesting arrangements that we can do. We can even move, say, the copy to the other side. So like here. And then now we have like a super wide scale. We can say you have now two scales you can read from. Yeah. And then above it, you play with the offset, and you have now 2 scales. So if you are the one animating this, and you did all your work on offset, I'd strongly recommend that you double this down, so that you have one offset for the T's and then another offset for the stripes, so that they look like they're all going in different directions. And this is among the many things that you should be thinking about when you're going into this page. Into this, where is that page? I missed it actually. Let's see. These, yes, the goods and the bads. Think about the goods and the bads. Think about all the stuff we talked about here. See this point, extra windows with other information, is essentially what I was doing in that other one. You find yourself stuck somewhere, like, okay, what else can I add to this to make it look better? Just come back to the list again and see gradients, lens effects, circles and circular elements. We've done that. Very thin lines. We have these 2 thin lines here which look pretty cool. Asymmetrical tables. Can we throw in a table? Maybe we can. Over here in this space, we could throw in that grid that I said I like. So just as a final sign off, because I also need to get going, guys, I'm going to show just how to create this grid, and then I guess you guys can also work from there. So I'll create a new text layer, do the same thing of adding dots. I can decide how thick I want this to be. So let's go to paragraphing. Let's make sure it's in the middle. Or actually, we can align left like that, and then add more dots. So those are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we'll use that mirror trick again. So we'll grab all these and move them to the top completely. Select those and hit enter and paste a few times. Then we can use let's go to paragraph character again. Let's drop this spacing so they're really close together but not very. Then we can copy the whole set and paste, and now we get a whole bunch of them. So we need 2 less lines. Then we can add the mirror effect on it, and we put it this way so that it mirrors to the bottom. As you can see, it's mirroring to the bottom. And then we can go animate opacity, set it to 45. We don't want them to disappear completely. And then we'll add selector wiggly. We'll go down here. You'll see here max amount 100, minimum amount minus 100. So we'll set minimum to 0, max to 100. This might be good, this might be bad, I'm not sure, but I'll stick with, actually let me stick with that. We'll set wiggles per second to 10, correlation to 0, so that they're all completely random. And then we go to here and let's see. Cool. Now I'm not feeling this height, so let's drop the height down kidogo. And there we go. We now have the randomized grid. Let me drop this even lower. Okay, so what if we wanted to make some red? Let's add another animator, and we'll go fill color. We'll choose RGB. It's going to make them all red, but if we go to animator 2, add selector wiggly, you'll see now we get random colors, which is not quite what we want. So here under lock dimensions, we'll switch that on, and that'll keep them from randomizing. Now they're just changing to red. Let's make this light blue so that it matches, or maybe a lighter color. Yeah, there. This time in wiggles per second, we'll put 0.5, and correlation to 100, no, 0. And then just to make sure opacity and this are not doing the same thing, change the random seed. And there you go. You now have a basic grid animation happening. So since this is happening below the offset, if we go back to the offset, you'll see the offset happens and the grid still stays indicating the lights without being affected by it. Anyway, cool. That's pretty much it for the HUDs that I wanted to talk about. Hope you guys learned something new, something interesting. I'm sure you did, but I hope it was useful to you guys and will apply to you whatever jobs you're going to be doing next. So I can share the presentation with you guys. Just